Naruto Uzumaki had learned to pack his whole life into one canvas bag in less than 3 minutes. 2 shirts went at the bottom. A cracked wooden frog went between them, so its last leg would not snap off. 3 coins were wrapped in an old handkerchief. A folded picture of the Hokage monument rested on top, because Naruto had drawn orange hair on every stone face. Naruto did not want the charcoal to smear. The caretaker stood in the doorway while he worked. She had already told him that the village office would move him again. She had said it after finding blue paint across the sign outside her room. She discovered that every left sandal in the building had vanished. Naruto had expected shouting. The calm voice had been worse. He pulled the cord tight, lifted the bag, and slipped past her before she could decide where he had to sleep that night. The late afternoon streets were crowded with people carrying flowers toward the memorial. They gave him space without being asked. Some stared at the marks on his cheeks. Others turned their children toward the mirror shop window until he passed. Naruto kept walking. He reached the memorial stone as the sun dropped behind the village walls. The paper flower in his pocket had been folded from a page torn out of an old lesson book. One petal was too large. Another had a greasy fingerprint from lunch. Naruto pushed it into a crack near the base of the stone and pressed it flat so the wind would not take it. He did not know the names carved there. He only knew that the village became colder on this day. Adults looked at him as if he had brought the cold with him. A young woman with red eyes had stopped several steps behind him. Kurenai Yuhi had come to leave incense for Shinobi who had died during the Nine Tails attack. She had expected grief, old anger, and the usual silence around the memorial. She had not expected to find a small blonde boy with a travel bag at his feet, carefully repairing a paper flower for people whose families avoided him. Naruto noticed her shadow and straightened. His hand closed around the bag strap. Kurenai asked where his caretaker was. He told her that the woman was probably filling out another form. He said it with a grin that showed too many teeth. Then he announced that he was exploring the village and had no intention of going back until someone found him a room with a better view. Kurenai looked at the bag. Its seams had been repaired with 3 different colors of thread. A corner of the wooden frog pushed against the canvas. She told him the village office was closed for the evening. Naruto said he would sleep outside. Kurenai informed him that the night patrol would carry him back before midnight. He considered this, then asked whether the patrol would let him choose which officer did the carrying. Kurenai almost smiled. She picked up the bag before he could object and started toward the district where the village kept several children under temporary care. Naruto followed because his possessions were moving away without him. The building was safe, clean, and badly suited to any child who wanted to feel wanted. 6 small rooms opened onto one shared hall. The walls smelled of boiled vegetables and cleaning soap. A duty roster near the entrance showed 4 different caretaker names for the current month. The woman who had watched Naruto earlier met them at the door. Her anger returned when she saw the missing sandals stacked beneath a rain barrel outside. Naruto had hidden them there after hearing 2 older children laugh about the whisker marks on his face. He had painted the sign because the caretaker had called him a burden within hearing distance. That excused what he had done. It did explain why he had done it. Kurenai listened to both sides. She made Naruto return the sandals, scrub the sign, and apologize to the children who had spent an hour searching. He did everything with a stiff back and a face that promised revenge on the entire concept of footwear. Then, Kurenai asked the caretaker how many times Naruto had been transferred. The woman hesitated before answering. 4 times in 2 years. Each placement had ended after complaints, fear from another family, or a caretaker requesting reassignment. Naruto was 6. Kurenai left only after confirming where he would sleep. Before she reached the outer street, Naruto leaned from the hallway window and shouted that she had forgotten to punish the rain barrel for hiding the sandals. She continued walking, but the paper flower stayed in her mind. The next morning, Kurenai reported the situation to the 3rd Hokage. Hiruzen Sarutobi listened from behind a desk crowded with mission reports. He already knew about the transfer request. He also knew that Naruto received meals, clothes, medical care, and constant hidden protection. On paper, every duty had been fulfilled. Kurenai pointed out that paper did not wake a child from nightmares or notice when he kept his belongings packed. Hiruzen removed his pipe and studied the smoke rising from its bowl. The years had taught him how easily a village could confuse supervision with care. Naruto had been protected as an important asset and managed as a difficult orphan. Neither arrangement had given him one adult who would still be present after the next form was signed. Finding such an adult was the problem. Kurenai did not volunteer herself. She was 21, still proving herself as a chunin, and often away on missions. She had come to report a failure in the system, not to claim she already knew how to repair it. Hiruzen asked her to visit the boy again before any move took place. He also delayed the transfer for 3 weeks and ordered the welfare office to examine all 4 failed placements. The care building was safe on paper, but he wanted to know why every adult assigned to Naruto eventually asked to be replaced. He reminded the staff that classified matters surrounding the child were never to be discussed within his hearing. Kurenai disliked that the village needed another investigation before admitting what the packed bag already showed. She disliked even more that she still had no lasting answer of her own. She returned that evening with a small box of grilled fish and rice. Naruto accepted it only after checking beneath the rice for medicine.
He ate too quickly, then slowed when he realized there was enough for both of them.
They avoided questions about his parents and her reasons for returning. Kurenai found an old handbell in a supply cupboard and showed him a simple attention exercise used with young academy students. She placed the bell on the table. Then she formed a hand sign and created 3 faint copies of its sound from different corners of the room. Naruto had to point toward the real one. He chose wrong 5 times. On the 6th attempt, he accused the bell of cheating. Kurenai changed the spacing between the sounds. Naruto closed his eyes and listened so hard that his shoulders rose toward his ears. His chakra pushed outward in a heavy, uneven wave. The false sounds broke at once. The real bell rang near Kurenai's hand. For one brief instant, she heard it from behind her. Kurenai turned. Nothing stood there. The room was empty. Naruto had opened his eyes and was staring at the bell with the offended expression of someone who had lost an argument to a piece of metal. She asked him to repeat whatever he had done. He tried. The next burst of chakra knocked the bell off the table and made the lamp flame bend sideways. After several more attempts, he produced nothing except a headache and a loud complaint about unfair training equipment. Kurenai ended the exercise. She told herself the distorted sound had been an accident caused by his chakra colliding with her technique. That explanation was probably true. It did not explain why the sound had moved in exactly the direction Naruto had pointed. She did not make a life-changing decision because of one strange sound. During the next 19 days, Kurenai returned 7 more times. Some visits lasted an hour. Others ended after she checked his dinner and helped him repair a torn sleeve. Naruto hid one of her gloves behind a water bucket. He refused to open a reading book until she threatened to read every line in a painfully slow voice. Once, he claimed that the office had canceled her visits just to see whether she would accept the order. Kurenai checked with the duty caretaker, learned that no such order existed, and returned to finish the visit. Naruto looked annoyed when she came back. One evening, a mission debrief kept her away past the time she had promised to visit. She sent a messenger with a note, then arrived after dark with soup from a stall that was still open. Naruto was sitting near the hallway window. He claimed he had only been studying the street patrol. 2 chipped bowls waited beside him, though no food had been served yet. The welfare review found no deliberate physical abuse. It found a different failure. Naruto had no primary caretaker. Transfers could be requested with little review, and several adults had spoken about him as a security problem, while he stood close enough to hear. The caretaker who had called him a burden was removed from direct child supervision until she completed new training. Hiruzen ordered that any future transfer require a written reason and an independent welfare check. The changes would help other children. They did not give Naruto one person who would still be there after the next duty roster changed. At the end of the 3 weeks, the caretaker's reassignment was approved. The office still had no permanent placement ready for Naruto. His bag remained beneath his bed, already packed. Kurenai understood that another evening visit would only make the next departure hurt more. Kurenai spent the next 6 days trying to treat the problem like a mission. She listed risks. Naruto was a Jinchuriki. His seal required monitoring. Enemies of the village would target him if his location became predictable. Her missions could keep her away from home. A frightened child with immense chakra could damage a house, injure himself, or draw attention before help arrived. Then she listed practical answers: a home near the inner patrol route, short assignments inside the Land of Fire, a trusted adult approved by the Hokage for emergencies, seals around the property, regular medical checks, a clear plan for chakra surges. The second list did not erase the first. It proved that fear did not have to make the decision by itself. On the 7th morning, she returned to the Hokage Tower and requested temporary guardianship. Hiruzen did not accept immediately. He asked where Naruto would live. Kurenai already rented a modest 2-room house near Training Ground 8. The second bedroom had been used for storage, but it had a sound roof, a window facing the inner patrol route, and enough space for a child. He asked who would supervise Naruto during missions. Kurenai named Emiko, a senior medic who had known her for years, worked daytime shifts at a neighborhood medical office, and had helped raise 2 nephews. Emiko already held clearance to treat sealed chakra injuries and had agreed to a new security review. Hiruzen asked whether the strange handbell incident had influenced Kurenai's request. Kurenai said it had shown her that Naruto needed careful training. It was not why she wanted him in her home. She wanted the placement because a 6-year-old had learned to keep every possession packed and to expect every adult to disappear. Hiruzen asked whether she understood that Anbu would continue watching the property. She did. He asked whether she was willing to refuse long deployments. Kurenai looked at the mission board on the wall. Several assignments there could have advanced her career. She said she was willing to take local security work, academy support, and short escort missions until the arrangement became stable. Hiruzen folded his hands. He had watched many shinobi make brave promises while emotion was fresh. Raising a child required a different kind of endurance. It meant returning after an argument, managing illness, paying for food, and rearranging years of plans around someone who might never thank you. He approved 1 month of temporary guardianship. The conditions filled 2 pages. Anbu observation would continue. Naruto's seal would be inspected every 2 weeks. Kurenai could not leave the village overnight without arranging approved supervision. Any unusual chakra event had to be reported. The home would receive protective barriers funded through the Jinchuriki security budget. The child support allowance that had paid for Naruto's food, clothes, and routine medical care would follow him into the household. It would not replace the mission income Kurenai gave up or pay for damage caused by careless training. Emiko's approved supervision during Kurenai's assigned work hours would be covered through the same security budget that had paid rotating staff at the care building. If the arrangement failed, Naruto would return to village care. Kurenai signed. She spent the next day clearing the second bedroom and moving boxes into her own room. The house had 1 narrow kitchen, a sitting room, and 2 bedrooms separated by a short hall. The roof did not leak. The back window faced a persimmon tree. 1 floorboard near the stove complained whenever anyone stepped on it. Kurenai stocked the kitchen with rice, vegetables, dried fish, tea, and more instant ramen than she intended to admit buying. She placed clean blankets in the smaller bedroom. A low shelf waited against the wall. The room looked unfinished, which felt better than pretending she already knew what Naruto would want. When she arrived at the care building, Naruto was sitting beside his packed bag. He listened while the caretaker explained the temporary arrangement. His expression barely changed. He asked how long he would stay. Kurenai answered honestly. 1 month, then the Hokage would review the situation. Naruto lifted the bag. He had become too practiced at leaving to waste time looking back. At the new house, Kurenai showed him the kitchen, the washroom, the sitting room, and his bedroom. Naruto walked around the small space twice. He checked the window latch, looked inside the empty wardrobe, and tapped the wall as if searching for a hidden door. He kept his bag in his hand. Dinner was rice, miso soup, vegetables, and grilled mackerel. Naruto ate as if a rival team might arrive to steal the table. He finished his first bowl before Kurenai had taken 3 bites. She served him another portion and told him to slow down. Naruto claimed that fast eating was advanced shinobi training. Kurenai asked which shinobi had taught him. He said it was probably classified. Halfway through the second bowl, his pace changed. He watched the remaining food while chewing. When Kurenai stood to refill the tea, he wrapped a piece of bread in a cloth and slid it into his sleeve. She saw the motion and said nothing. That night, Naruto placed the bag beneath the bed. He removed only his toothbrush and the clothes he planned to wear the next morning. Kurenai left the hall lamp burning low. After midnight, a crash came from his room. She reached the doorway with a kunai in hand and found Naruto attacking his pillow with a sandal. A large beetle had discovered the bread hidden beneath it and was dragging crumbs across the blanket. Naruto insisted that the insect had launched a surprise assault. Kurenai removed the beetle, changed the pillowcase, and showed him the covered food box in the kitchen. She explained that anything placed there would still belong to him in the morning. Naruto nodded with solemn suspicion. The next day, she found 2 bread rolls hidden in his desk drawer. She moved them to the food box and left a note beside them. The note said that beetles did not respect property rights. The first week developed a rhythm. Kurenai woke early, prepared breakfast, and took Naruto with her when work allowed. When it did not, Emiko watched him in the house or at the medical office. Naruto explored every cabinet, tested every rule, and learned that the squeaking board near the stove could announce Kurenai's approach. At night, he woke several times. He never called for her. He walked into the hallway, looked toward her door, and returned to bed once he saw it was closed rather than empty. On the 6th night, Kurenai placed a glass of water on the hall table. The next morning, half of it was gone. By the end of the first week, Naruto still had not unpacked his bag. He had stopped carrying it from room to room. Naruto decided that Kurenai had lasted long enough to require a serious test. The first test involved her equipment pouch. Kurenai woke before sunrise for a patrol briefing and found the pouch missing from its hook. She searched the bedroom, the kitchen, and the entry shelf. Naruto sat at the table, eating rice with the attentive innocence of someone watching a trap close. The pouch rested inside the empty flour jar. Kurenai recovered it, washed the dust from her wire spool, and asked Naruto whether he knew how it had moved. He suggested that a very organized thief had broken in. Kurenai made him clean the kitchen after breakfast. The second test involved sugar and salt. Kurenai noticed the switch before tasting her tea, because Naruto had arranged himself at the perfect angle to watch her drink. She switched the containers back while he was tying his sandals. He later poured a large spoonful of salt over his own breakfast and spent 10 minutes pretending the taste was intentional. The third test left orange paint across one wall of the sitting room. Kurenai returned from work, placed her sandals neatly by the door, and stood before the hand-sized spiral Naruto had painted above the floor mat. The spiral had become a sun, then a frog, then something that might have been the Hokage wearing fish for eyebrows. Naruto waited near the window. Kurenai gave him a bucket, a brush, and a cloth. He asked whether she planned to send him back. She told him she planned to make him scrub until the wall looked like a wall again. Naruto cleaned for most of the afternoon. The paint had dried in the grooves. Kurenai worked beside him when the stain proved harder than expected, but she did not take the brush from his hand. That evening, they ate late. Naruto studied her face across the table. He looked almost disappointed. Kurenai understood then that the pranks had a purpose. Each one was a stone thrown against a bridge. Naruto wanted to hear where it cracked. Kurenai answered every test with the same clear rules. Naruto repaired what he damaged, apologized when another person was affected, and lost dessert after lying. Breakfast still appeared each morning. Kurenai still returned each evening. 3 weeks into the trial month, a message arrived from the mission office. A merchant convoy needed an escort to the eastern border. The assignment would last 12 days. The team leader had asked for Kurenai because smugglers on the route were known to use visual disguises. Success would place her closer to consideration for special Jonin status. Kurenai read the request twice. Emiko could watch Naruto during daytime hours. Overnight supervision for 12 days required a different approval, and the arrangement had not been completed. Kurenai could ask Hiruzen for an exception, though doing so during a trial guardianship would weaken her claim that she had built a stable plan. She declined the mission. Naruto heard about it from two shinobi outside a supply shop. One said Kurenai had passed up good pay because of a difficult home assignment. The other replied that taking responsibility for a child the whole village feared would damage anyone's career. Naruto returned home before Kurenai and pulled the bag from beneath his bed. He packed the toothbrush first, then the two shirts. The wooden frog went between them. His hands moved quickly, but he had more to pack now. A new cup sat on the shelf. A pair of warm socks lay in the wardrobe. 3 of Kurenai's notes were hidden inside his lesson book. He left those behind. By the time Kurenai opened the front door, Naruto was standing in the entry hall with a bag over one shoulder. He told her that the trial had been useful. He had tested the bed, the food, and the roof. Everything worked. She could return him now and take the border mission next time. Kurenai set down the groceries. She asked who had told him about the assignment. Naruto refused to answer. His chin lifted, but the bag strap had twisted around his fingers until the skin turned pale. Kurenai explained that the mission office had offered her one kind of work, and she had chosen another. Signing the guardianship papers had been her decision. Adults carried responsibility for their own choices. Naruto said she would regret it later. Kurenai told him that regret was also her responsibility. He tried to step around her. She placed one hand on the bag and asked where he planned to go. Naruto had no answer ready. The care building was preparing his old room for someone else. The village office had already closed. He could sleep near the memorial or beneath a shop awning, though the night patrol would find him before morning. Kurenai loosened his fingers from the strap. "You do not have to disappear to make my life easier," she said. The sentence ended the argument more effectively than shouting could have. Naruto stared at the floor. Kurenai carried the groceries into the kitchen and began putting them away. The bag stayed in his hands, and the doorways stayed open. After several minutes, Naruto returned to his room. The next morning, 2 shirts hung inside the wardrobe. The cracked wooden frog sat on the shelf. The bag remained packed with the rest. Kurenai saw the change and continued preparing breakfast. The trial month ended 3 days later. Hiruzen extended the arrangement for another 6 months. Naruto celebrated by claiming that the Hokage had finally recognized his excellent behavior. Kurenai handed him the brush and pointed toward a faint orange mark still hiding near the floor. Kurenai waited until Naruto had lived in the house for nearly 2 months before beginning formal chakra training. The delay frustrated him. He had seen shinobi leap across rooftops, walk along walls, and vanish in bursts of smoke. He had also seen Kurenai make a sparring partner strike at empty air during a demonstration near the academy grounds. From that day, Naruto asked for genjutsu lessons at breakfast, during chores, and once while Kurenai was halfway through washing soap from her hair. Kurenai started with control rather than technique. She placed a dry leaf on Naruto's palm and told him to feed it a steady thread of chakra. The goal was to make the leaf tremble without tearing. Naruto blasted it across the room. The second leaf split along the middle. The third stuck to his forehead, which he declared a partial victory. By the end of the hour, the floor looked as if a small storm had entered through the window. Kurenai reduced the exercise. Naruto had to hold chakra at the tip of one finger while breathing slowly. His hand shook. The energy gathered in heavy pulses, faded, then surged again. He could produce enough chakra to overwhelm the exercise 10 times over. Yet, he could not keep the amount small. For a week, the leaf refused to tremble politely. Naruto began calling it an enemy agent. Kurenai moved to basic sensory illusion work. Before the first attempt, she explained what the exercise could and could not do. Genjutsu, did not create a real sound, light, or object. It disturbed the chakra that carried sensory information to the mind. A skilled user could place a precise link on one target. Naruto could not yet hold such a narrow connection. Kurenai gave him a simpler method. He would anchor a short pulse to a visible point, such as a cup, a door, or a patch of floor. The pulse spread through a narrow field, no farther than 10 paces. Anyone standing inside that field could receive the same false cue. A wall, lost line of sight, or a sharp disruption of chakra would break the effect. Until Naruto learned to narrow the field, every bystander inside it was a possible target. The method suited his large bursts of chakra. It also made careless use dangerous. Kurenai placed a white cup on the table and asked Naruto to make it appear slightly taller to both of them. The technique required a simple hand sign, a controlled release toward the cup, and a clear image held in the mind. Naruto focused until his face reddened. The cup stretched toward the ceiling, bent in the middle, and grew 3 handles. The illusion shattered after less than a second. Naruto thought 3 handles improved the design. Kurenai disagreed. The next attempt turned a red flower blue, green, yellow, and purple at the same time. Another made the sound of a falling coin burst through the kitchen like a metal plate thrown down a stairwell. Naruto jumped harder than Kurenai did and accused his own technique of attacking without permission. A traditional genjutsu student learned refinement first. The student changed one detail so gently that the target accepted it without question. Naruto's chakra entered every exercise like a boy kicking open a locked door. Kurenai refused to lie to him. She told Naruto that he was currently terrible at ordinary genjutsu. He spent the rest of breakfast glaring at his soup. Later that day, Kurenai changed the training. She took him to a busy street near the mission office and asked him to close his eyes. He had to identify passing people by sound. Heavy sandals, a cane striking stone, a cart with one loose wheel, a shinobi whose weapons clicked against a thigh pouch. Naruto guessed wildly at first. He mistook a dog for a tired academy teacher. He identified a woman carrying pottery as 3 people arguing. When Kurenai asked what had made him think that, he explained that the jars struck each other in different tones. The answer was wrong, but the observation was useful. They repeated the exercise in other places. At the market, Naruto learned that fresh fish changed the smell of the entire lane before the stall came into view. Near the training grounds, he learned to distinguish a thrown kunai from a thrown stone by the way the air snapped. In the house, Kurenai moved 5 objects while he faced the wall. Naruto had to turn and identify what had changed. He improved quickly when the task involved catching someone else making a mistake. Kurenai also taught him to compare senses. A voice from the left should match the movement of a mouth on the left. A heavy man should press deeper footprints into wet ground than a child. A cup that looked hot should release steam and warm the hand. One evening, Naruto pushed his bowl away and announced that vegetables were the easiest food in the world to detect. They looked bad, smelled bad, and tasted like punishment. Kurenai left a note in his lunchbox the next morning. It told him not to trade the vegetables for ramen. Naruto decided to obey the exact wording. He did not trade them. He painted thin lines across the cabbage and used a weak visual distortion to make the strips look like noodles. The result fooled him from a distance. Up close, the noodles were green, square, and attached to one another. Kurenai opened the box after training. The cabbage smelled exactly like cabbage. The next note said that any vegetable disguised as ramen would return in a double portion. Naruto read it twice and checked the ceiling for hidden observers. The watching Anbu on the roof remained silent. Kurenai knew the masked shinobi changed every few days. Naruto believed one enormous, highly trained cat lived above the house because Kurenai occasionally left a covered bowl near the roof ladder during long security shifts. He spent several evenings trying to lure the animal down with dried fish. One Anbu eventually accepted the fish to preserve the secret. Naruto found the empty bowl the next morning and became convinced the cat could use chakra. The lighter moments made the slow exercises bearable. For every small improvement, there were days when nothing worked. Naruto's patience failed before his chakra control did. He tried to force results, which made the illusions louder and less stable. Kurenai began using the old handbell again. At first, Naruto only listened. Kurenai created false rings around the room, and he identified the real one. Then she removed the bell and asked him to reproduce a single sound from one direction. The first attempts came from everywhere. A weak chime seemed to vibrate through the table, the floor, and Naruto's own teeth. Another attempt sounded like someone striking a cooking pot. Kurenai reduced the target. One sound, one place, 1 second. Naruto practiced before breakfast and after chores. He practiced by the persimmon tree until sparrows stopped landing nearby. He practiced in a sitting room until Kurenai banned the exercise after sunset. Several weeks passed. One rainy afternoon, Kurenai sat at the table checking the stack of academy support reports. Naruto had promised to complete a page of writing exercises. He had finished half, drawn a frog in the margin, and decided that a visitor would provide an excellent reason to stop. He formed the hand sign beneath the table. His chakra rose too quickly. He caught it, reduced the flow, and fixed his attention on the front door. The door became the anchor. Kurenai sat inside the narrow field between Naruto and the entryway. In his mind, knuckles struck wood 3 times. The sound came. Kurenai looked up. Naruto's concentration broke at once. The false knock vanished, but he had seen her eyes move toward the door. Kurenai opened it. The street outside was empty. She turned back slowly. Naruto bent over his lesson page with such intensity that the pencil point snapped. Kurenai asked whether he had created the sound. He considered lying. Then he remembered the wall, the mission, and the bag that now held fewer things than before. He admitted it. The knock had lasted less than a second. It had been too loud for a relaxed visitor. It had also come from the correct direction, and Kurenai had reacted before noticing the chakra disturbance. Naruto waited for praise. Kurenai gave him another page of writing exercises. She explained that using genjutsu to avoid work was still progress, but it was not a successful escape. Naruto complained for the next 10 minutes. He completed both pages. That evening, Kurenai wrote several observations in a private training record. Naruto could not yet construct one detailed illusion. He could produce small sensory errors when he reduced the technique to a single purpose. His attention moved easily between details. His large chakra reserve remained a problem, though repeated short pulses suited him better than one sustained delicate flow. A possible method began to take shape. Naruto might never become the kind of genjutsu user who built one perfect false world inside a target's mind. He might learn to create several simple mistakes instead: a sound from the wrong alley, a shadow moving half a step too late, a wall that seemed closer than it was. Each error would be weak by itself. Together they could make an opponent doubt every decision. Kurenai did not tell Naruto yet. One successful knock was not a fighting style. The following afternoon, someone knocked on the front door while Naruto practiced handwriting. Kurenai ignored it. The knock came again. Naruto looked delighted. He had not formed a hand sign. On the third knock, the entrance barrier recognized Hiruzen's chakra and admitted him. The watching Anbu tapped the roof once to signal an authorized visitor. Hiruzen opened the door and found Kurenai staring suspiciously at the wall, while Naruto laughed into his sleeve. Hiruzen had come to discuss the next placement review. He left with a cup of tea and a copy of Kurenai's training record. He also carried a warning that impersonating the Hokage's arrival through genjutsu would be treated as a very serious offense. Naruto asked, how serious? Hiruzen said it depended on whether the illusion remembered to bring paperwork. By early winter, the temporary guardianship had lasted long enough to become visible throughout the neighborhood. Naruto left the same house each morning. He returned to the same door each evening. Shopkeepers saw Kurenai correct him when he reached for food before paying. Patrol officers saw him carry her training bag while complaining that it contained enough equipment to invade another country. The medical office recorded regular seal examinations and fewer stress-related chakra surges. The reports improved. The village did not change as quickly. Some people treated Naruto more politely because Kurenai stood beside him. Others resented her for bringing him into a residential street. Parents warned their children not to visit the house. A few shinobi respected Kurenai's choice, while privately calling it reckless. Kurenai had now filed a formal petition to adopt Naruto. The application was dated, witnessed, and placed in the village record before the review began. A decision was scheduled for 1 month later and required approval from Hiruzen and a small group representing village security, medical oversight, and civilian welfare. One member of the group, a narrow-faced administrator named Masato Abe, argued that a young, active shinobi could not provide long-term stability. He preferred a secure residence managed directly by the village, with rotating staff and constant guards. Masato was not trying to hurt Naruto. His office had spent years planning what would happen if the Nine-Tails chakra broke through the seal. Every document on his desk measured danger. None measured what repeated rejection did to a child. Kurenai prepared carefully for the review. She updated the emergency plan, arranged backup supervision, and recorded Naruto's training limits. She also made him promise not to use genjutsu in public. Naruto kept the promise for 11 days. On the 12th, they visited the winter market. The street was crowded with people buying blankets, preserved vegetables, lamp oil, and medicine. Kurenai stopped at a tool stall, while Naruto studied a ramen stand with the devotion of a pilgrim. A merchant near the end of the row recognized him. The man's expression tightened. When Naruto approached to look at a set of cheap wooden targets, the merchant covered the goods with a cloth and told him to leave. Naruto asked what he had done. The merchant said everyone knew that trouble followed the boy, and that he wanted none of it near his stall. Kurenai heard the last words and started toward them. Naruto saw her coming. He also saw several customers watching, waiting to learn whether the strange child would cause trouble. His anger climbed into his throat. He remembered the rule against public genjutsu. He remembered the market man's satisfied face. Then, he decided that a sound did not count as serious genjutsu if nobody could prove where it came from. Naruto formed a small hand sign beside his leg and chose the ground near the merchant's feet as his anchor. The narrow field should have reached only the man. Naruto knew the lane was crowded and knew his control was not good enough to guarantee that. Anger made him pretend the risk was smaller than it was. He sent a short pulse of chakra forward and imagined a pouch of coins falling open. The result was far stronger than intended. The field spread across most of the lane instead of ending around the merchant. A violent metallic crash burst through the lane. Several customers jumped. A woman dropped a basket of jars. One jar broke, and a nearby horse reared against its harness. The cart behind it rolled sideways into a display of winter squash. Naruto lost the technique at once. Kurenai moved before he could react. She caught the horse's bridle, turned its head away from the crowd, and used a low, calming illusion that made the animal hear its handler's voice from directly ahead. The handler regained control. Two shinobi lifted the cart. Naruto stood among rolling squash with his hands clenched at his sides. No one had been badly hurt. 3 jars were broken. A stall frame cracked. The merchant whose words had provoked Naruto began shouting that the boy had attacked the market. Kurenai did not argue that Naruto was innocent. She asked witnesses what they had experienced, checked the injuries, and reported the unauthorized technique to the patrol officer. Then, she made Naruto help gather every piece of broken pottery. He waited for her to defend him from the merchant. She defended the truth instead. The man had treated a child cruelly. Naruto had answered by frightening an entire lane. Both facts mattered. The cost of the damage exceeded the coins Naruto kept in his room. Kurenai paid the stall owners immediately from her mission savings. The village allowance covered Naruto's ordinary food and clothing, not damage caused by a forbidden technique. Naruto would repay a small, symbolic part through chores approved by the market committee. His saved ramen money covered the first portion. That loss wounded him more deeply than the scraped palms he got from collecting squash. For the next 2 weekends, Naruto carried boxes, swept lanes, and repaired wooden displays under supervision. Some merchants kept their distance. Others began speaking to him after watching him work without running away. The potter whose jars had broken gave him the task of sorting clay cups by size. Naruto completed it, then quietly used his observation training to point out that one shelf leaned toward the aisle. The potter checked and found a cracked support before it collapsed. The event reached Masato's desk before Kurenai's formal report did. At the next meeting, he argued that Naruto's access to genjutsu made the home placement more dangerous. A secure facility could limit his training and keep civilians away during chakra surges. Kurenai answered with records rather than anger. Naruto had violated a rule. He had admitted it, repaired damage, and continued training under tighter limits. Moving him again would teach him that mistakes ended relationships. It would also remove the one environment in which he had begun reporting problems honestly. Hiruzen asked whether she planned to stop teaching him genjutsu. Kurenai said she planned to teach him control, responsibility, and the exact consequences of using it carelessly. Ignoring his chakra would not make it disappear. The scheduled adoption decision was postponed until the security office completed a longer review. Kurenai's petition remained active, and its original filing date did not change. Naruto learned about the delay from Kurenai. She refused to hide it from him. He asked whether the market accident had ruined everything. Kurenai told him it had made the decision harder. Naruto looked toward the hall, where his bag still waited beneath the bed. He had unpacked the frog, the shirts, and most of the small objects. The 3 coins and the old picture remained inside. That night, he practiced the handbell exercise until his chakra wavered. Kurenai stopped him before exhaustion turned into another uncontrolled burst. She told him that skill would not purchase a place in the house. Naruto heard the words. He did not fully believe them. Several days later, Hiruzen sent notice that Naruto would receive a preparation assessment for the academy once the adoption review was complete. The academy was still some time away, but the staff needed to know whether he could learn safely beside other children. Kurenai placed the notice on the table. Naruto stared at the academy seal. He imagined classrooms, training yards, and students who had heard the same warnings their parents repeated in shops. The house had become easier to understand. The world outside it remained uncertain. The winter supply program began, while the extended adoption review was still underway. Every year, the village collected rice, blankets, fuel, and medicine for households that could not afford the cold season. The largest distribution center operated from an old mission warehouse near the western wall. The building had been divided into 3 working areas. Civilian families entered a broad front hall, where clerks checked names and handed out prepared boxes. A stone packing bay stood behind a waist-high counter. Locked doors separated both areas from the rear stores and the side delivery yard. Lamp oil was kept in its own caged bay behind a fire door. Children and ordinary volunteers were not allowed past the painted line at the front of the packing area. Kurenai accepted 2 days of security duty there. The assignment kept her inside the village. The welfare office approved Naruto to help in the public hall under Emiko's direct supervision. 2 Anbu observers covered the roof and yard. 2 warehouse guards watched the restricted doors. Naruto knew several children who came for supplies. Some had lived in the same care building. Others wore coats that had passed through too many older siblings. He avoided talking about his new house in front of them. Instead, he carried light parcels along the marked front lane, read labels aloud for younger children, and complained loudly whenever a box contained more turnips than rice. The first morning passed quietly. On the second, a hospital delivery arrived shortly after noon. 4 workers in gray winter coats pushed a cart through the side gate. Their manifest listed bandages, fever medicine, and sealed cans of lamp oil. Each porter carried a numbered wooden token. The lead worker presented a genuine hospital seal, and the numbers matched the manifest. 3 of the men moved with the tired rhythm of porters who had spent the morning hauling crates. The 4th kept one hand near his scarf and watched the exits. A correction slip had been clipped beneath the delivery record. It claimed that one family entry in the front hall had been copied twice and authorized an additional medicine box. The new total no longer matched the sealed distribution list. Because changes made after sealing required security approval, One clerk called Kurenai away from the cart. The welfare stamp on the correction looked real at a glance. Naruto continued carrying empty baskets near the painted line. The fourth worker lifted a wooden medicine case from the cart. He wore thick black boots, a wool cap, and a scarf across the lower half of his face. The case bore the hospital mark. Nothing about him should have drawn attention. His footsteps did. The boots looked heavy enough to leave deep marks in the damp ground. The prints behind him were shallow. When he turned toward the counting room, the soles made almost no sound against stone. Naruto watched the case next. 2 adult volunteers had carried the same kind of box that morning, because glass bottles made it awkward and heavy. This man lifted his with one arm. His shoulders still rose, as if he expected more weight than the case actually held. The observations did not prove theft. Kurenai had spent months teaching Naruto that noticing something strange and understanding it were different tasks. He set down his basket and found her near the records table. Naruto explained the boots, the quiet steps, and the light case. Kurenai treated the observation as a field report. She asked where the worker had gone, then signaled the Anbu observer with a small motion hidden by her sleeve. The side corridor led to a secured counting room where incoming medicine was opened and recorded before storage. Kurenai entered through the front. One Anbu moved across the roof toward the rear window. A warehouse guard quietly closed the outer gate and stopped the cart. The 3 remaining porters were told to wait where they stood. The fourth worker stood beside the counting table. The real fever medicine had been removed from its marked case and replaced with cloth-wrapped clay bricks. An empty return crate near his feet had a false wooden bottom. Several medicine bottles already lay beneath it. Once the unloading clerk signed the manifest, the return crate could have left on the same cart without appearing on the outgoing list. The workers saw Kurenai notice the false panel. The transformation technique broke in a ripple of chakra. The false broad face narrowed. The gray coat remained, but the man beneath it was lean, with a scar running from his left ear to his jaw. Kurenai recognized Tetsuo Maki, a former genin dismissed from village service after falsifying transport records. During the 2 years since his disappearance, Tetsuo had worked with smugglers along the eastern border. A warrant also linked him to the death of a courier who had recognized him. Fever medicine sold for several times its ordinary value during the coldest part of winter. One hidden case could earn more than months of common work. Tetsuo understood that capture would mean far more than another dismissal. He threw a smoke pellet before Kurenai finished reaching for a kunai. Gray smoke filled the counting room and poured into the corridor. Kurenai heard the back window open. She sent a chakra pulse through the smoke, creating the illusion of a solid wall across the opening. Tetsuo struck it with one hand, felt his fingers pass through, and broke the genjutsu with a sharp release of chakra. The hesitation still cost him a second. The Anbu outside reached the window just as Tetsuo hurled the stolen return case through it. The case hit the masked shinobi in the chest. Bottles scattered across the yard, but the grass and snow softened most of the fall. Tetsuo followed with a kunai attached to wire. The blade caught the window frame, and he pulled himself through before Kurenai could close the distance. The Anbu blocked his first kick. Tetsuo twisted the wire around the shinobi's arm, planted both feet against the wall, and dragged him off balance. Then he cut the line and ran toward the packing bay. Against Kurenai and an Anbu, Tetsuo would lose a direct fight. The public hall gave him a better weapon. Families still filled the front half of the building, while smoke, narrow doors, and stacked supplies made every large technique dangerous. Kurenai followed him into the yard. Tetsuo kicked over a rack of empty crates. The falling wood forced her to jump rather than pursue along the ground. He used the opening to throw 2 smoke bombs through the packing doors. People shouted inside. Clerks opened the main doors and began directing families into the front courtyard. Children near the packing counter froze or ran in different directions. Naruto heard Kurenai order everyone away from the restricted doors. He grabbed the hands of 2 younger children and pulled them behind the stone sorting counter. Emiko began moving the rest toward the front wall, where the smoke was thinner and the main exit remained clear. Tetsuo entered through the side packing door and used transformation again. This time he wore the face and coat of a warehouse guard. He shouted that the Eastern Service Passage was safe and waved several civilians toward the corridor he planned to use. Naruto recognized the boots. He climbed onto the sorting counter and yelled that the guard was the thief. Tetsuo's head snapped toward him. The transformed face twisted with anger. Tetsuo drew a kunai and cut the rope supporting a tall rack of blankets. The rack leaned toward the children. Naruto pushed one child down and threw himself against the other. Emiko caught the edge with both hands, but the weight drove her to one knee. Kurenai abandoned the chase long enough to reach them. She hooked chakra wire around the rack and anchored it to a support beam. The delay gave Tetsuo the open path he needed. He ran through the restricted door and into the rear service aisle. Naruto started after him. Kurenai caught the back of his jacket and ordered him to stay with Emiko. Naruto pointed toward the eastern passage. He had seen Tetsuo look at it twice before dropping the rack. The left branch reached the outer delivery gate. The right branch ended at a second gate used by patrol teams. Kurenai signaled the second Anbu from the front roof to circle toward the right branch. The first remained near the rear window. Kurenai moved along the center aisle, keeping herself between Tetsuo and the civilians who had not yet reached the front doors. The thief knew the main side gate had been closed. He cut the emergency seal on the lamp oil cage and tore the fire door open. Then, he slapped an incendiary tag against the nearest shelf. A thin red chakra thread ran from the tag to a metal ring around one finger. The paper had already been primed and gave off a low hiss while the thread fed it. One deliberate surge through the ring would begin a 2-second ignition. Cutting the charged thread before neutralizing the ring could dump the stored chakra into the tag and start the same reaction. Kurenai stopped. Tetsuo backed toward the eastern passage with his right hand held away from his body. The flexible chakra thread lengthened behind him. If Kurenai rushed him, he could send the ignition pulse before she crossed the aisle. The burning oil would fill the rear passage, cut off part of the evacuation route, and spread into the packing bay before the fire doors could be closed. The ANBU at the rear window could not cross Tetsuo's line of sight without getting in time to send the ignition pulse. The second ANBU had not yet reached the right branch. Kurenai formed a hand sign slowly. But Tetsuo had already broken one of her illusions, and now watched her eyes and hands. Naruto could see the scene from behind the sorting counter. Tetsuo stood less than 10 paces away, close enough for the short field Naruto had practiced. Kurenai stood outside the narrow angle between Naruto and the patch of floor behind the thief. Kurenai had taught him that genjutsu worked best when it agreed with something the target already expected. Tetsuo expected pursuit. He expected an Anbu behind him. He expected Kurenai to protect the oil and civilians before chasing him. Naruto pressed 2 fingers together beneath the counter. He chose the stone floor directly behind Tetsuo as the anchor. Too much chakra would spread the field wide enough to catch Kurenai and announce the illusion. Too little would fail before it disturbed Tetsuo's senses. Naruto released one short pulse. 3 fast footsteps struck the ground behind Tetsuo. Kurenai felt the edge of Naruto's chakra pass through the aisle, but the false sound did not enter her hearing. Tetsuo stood inside the field. He turned and slashed at empty air. The movement turned his trigger hand away from Kurenai and delayed the ignition pulse. Kurenai flicked her own chakra wire across the aisle. It wrapped around Tetsuo's wrist before he could recover. She pulled his arm down and pinned the ring hand against the shelf. Tetsuo released a disruption through his chakra network while keeping the trigger hand closed so the pulse did not enter the ring. Naruto's field broke. The thief cut Kurenai's wire with a second blade and kicked a medicine crate into the aisle between them. He had understood the trick after one mistake. His eyes found Naruto behind the counter. The heavy chakra pulse had revealed the direction of the caster. Tetsuo threw the second kunai. The blade passed over his head and struck the wooden post behind him. Emiko dragged him lower as Tetsuo sprinted for the eastern passage. Kurenai jumped over the crate. Tetsuo scattered metal spikes across the floor and shoved a stack of boxes into her path. She could clear both obstacles, but every extra movement gave him more distance. Naruto's hands shook. The first technique had drained more control than it should have. A dull ache pressed behind his eyes. He remembered the cabbage disguised as noodles. The illusion had failed because the smell disagreed. One false sense could be checked against another. Tetsuo now knew the footsteps were false. Naruto needed a second mistake before the man could test the first. He formed the sign again. The chakra slipped wide. A sound, like a door slamming, burst from the ceiling. It caught Emiko as well as Tetsuo. Emiko flinched. Tetsuo did not turn. Naruto tried to force more energy into the technique. The lamp flames along the wall bent as his chakra spilled beyond the field. Kurenai had warned him that forcing control after exhaustion would only make the result louder. He stopped, took one breath, and looked at the aisle. Tetsuo was 5 steps from the fork. Kurenai was behind him. The Anbu Kurenai had sent waited beyond the right turn. A hanging lamp cast Tetsuo's real shadow forward and slightly left. A full human figure was beyond Naruto's control. One moving shape would be enough. He chose 2 anchors inside the same narrow field. The first was the stone behind Tetsuo. The second was the left wall where a real pursuer's shadow might appear. Naruto released a smaller pulse. Footsteps sounded behind Tetsuo again. At the same moment, a dark human shadow slid across the wall to his left. Tetsuo knew one sound could be false. The shadow suggested that a real attacker had entered from another aisle. He shifted away from it and chose the right branch of the passage. That was the branch leading toward the waiting Anbu. Tetsuo rounded the corner and found a masked shinobi with a blade held at chest height. He stopped too late. The Anbu struck his wrist and broke his grip on the kunai. Tetsuo spun, tried to retreat, and met Kurenai at the passage entrance. She caught his arm, drove one knee into the back of his leg, and forced him to the floor. A short genjutsu made the stone beneath him feel as if roots had closed around his limbs. Tetsuo disrupted the illusion with another chakra release, but the Anbu had already locked metal restraints around both wrists. The incendiary tag still hissed inside the oil cage. Kurenai held Tetsuo's trigger hand against the floor until the Anbu removed the metal ring and sealed it in a pouch. Then, she crossed the aisle, severed the weakened chakra thread at the edge of the tag, and covered the paper with a containment seal. The hissing stopped. Only after the fire threat ended did Kurenai return to Naruto. He was sitting beside the sorting counter with one hand pressed to his temple. The second field had lasted less than 2 seconds. His chakra pathways around the eyes and temples felt scraped raw from the effort. Kurenai checked his eyes and pulse. Emiko examined the back of his head and the skin around his temples. Then, Kurenai asked why he had disobeyed the order to stay out of the fight. Naruto argued that he had stayed behind the counter for almost the entire fight. Emiko pointed out the kunai buried in the post above his head. Naruto lowered his voice. The warehouse remained closed after the arrest. Guards moved every civilian into the courtyard. Medics checked the people who had breathed smoke, and ANBU sealed both rear rooms until every case could be counted. The 3 genuine porters were questioned and released after their identities were confirmed. A patrol found the missing 4th porter bound in a maintenance shed beside the hospital loading yard. Tetsuo had taken his coat, token, and service papers before the cart left the hospital. Investigators also found that the correction slip which distracted the clerks carried a copied welfare stamp and had been inserted beneath the manifest before the delivery left the hospital yard. The false bottom in the return crate completed the plan. Tetsuo had expected the real porters to push the cart back out with what they believed were empty cases. Hiruzen arrived after the site was secure and the first medical checks were complete. Naruto tried to explain that he had created a convincing team of invisible reinforcements. To prove the point, he attempted a command in the Hokage's voice. The imitation sounded like Hiruzen with a severe cold. Everyone nearby turned toward the real Hokage. Hiruzen looked at Naruto, then at Kurenai. He observed that impersonating the village leader during a security investigation was indeed serious. Naruto asked whether helping capture a smuggler made it less serious. Hiruzen said it made the paperwork more confusing. The urgent food boxes were moved to a nearby mission hall before nightfall. The warehouse itself stayed sealed for 2 days, while guards inspected every delivery, replaced the damaged rack, and changed the procedure for checking individual porters. The recovered medicine reached the neighborhood stations the following morning. Several bottles had broken in the yard, but the hospital replaced them from its emergency reserve. Tetsuo was taken to a secure cell on charges of theft, false identity, assault, attempted arson, and the older crimes already attached to his warrant. Kurenai and both Anbu submitted separate reports. Eniko filed a medical statement about every child who had been in the hall. Kurenai and the Anbu had made the arrest. Naruto's illusion created the opening they needed when direct force risked everyone around them. More important to Kurenai, Naruto had noticed the danger and come to her first. Several months earlier, he would have followed the suspicious worker alone to prove he could handle the problem. This time, he trusted someone else before trying to become the hero. That night, after the medic allowed him to return home, Kurenai wrote a new line in his training record. Naruto had combined 2 simple sensory distortions inside one short field under pressure. The result remained unstable, brief, and dangerous to him when overused. It was also the first clear proof that the unusual method could work. Across the room, Naruto fell asleep at the table while trying to write an apology for disobeying orders. His hand rested on the first sentence. The writing claimed that he was sorry for using excellent judgment without receiving permission in advance. Kurenai took the pencil from his fingers and carried him to bed. The warehouse incident changed the final review, though not in the simple way Naruto expected. For the next 3 months, Kurenai's home remained under observation while the medic tracked Naruto's recovery and the security office reviewed every report. By the time spring rain replaced the last dirty snow along the streets, the village had 7 months of records on their life together. Naruto spent the first 2 days forbidden from using chakra except during medical checks. He followed the rule with poor grace. On the second morning, he dropped a cup, stared at the broken pieces, and asked whether property damage still counted against the adoption if no genjutsu had been involved. Kurenai handed him a brush and told him that broken cups counted against breakfast only when someone left the pieces on the floor. The answer did not remove his fear, but the daily routine continued. He completed reading lessons with Kurenai, attended short preparation sessions at the welfare office, finished his market chores, and came home to the same table. Kurenai attended every review meeting and returned with the same folder. The bag beneath his bed stayed partly packed. The ANBU report praised his observation and confirmed that his genjutsu had redirected Tetsuo into the capture route. The same report recorded that Naruto had remained in danger after Kurenai ordered him to stay behind cover. The medical officer added that the strain from 2 linked illusions had inflamed several chakra pathways around his eyes and temples. He recovered after 2 days of rest, but repeating the attempt could have caused a longer injury. Kurenai included every detail in her own account. Naruto asked whether leaving out the disobedience would help. Kurenai said it might help for 1 meeting and damage everything after the truth emerged. He asked whether they could leave out the part where he had sounded like a sick Hokage. Kurenai told him that detail had already appeared in 3 witness statements. The review took place in a quiet room inside the Hokage Tower. Hiruzen sat at the head of a low table. Masato represented civilian security. A senior medic brought Naruto's seal records. The welfare officer carried reports from the care building, Emiko, and the neighborhood patrol. Kurenai arrived with a folder thick enough to make Naruto nervous. He waited outside with Emiko while the adults spoke. Through the closed door, he could hear only the rise and fall of voices. Once, Masato spoke loudly enough for Naruto to catch the words "uncontrolled technique." Later, Hiruzen asked a question that brought a long silence. Naruto counted the boards in the ceiling. He counted the cracks near the window. He tried to identify every person walking in the hall by their steps. After an hour, the welfare officer called him inside. The room contained too many serious faces. Naruto sat beside Kurenai and kept both hands on his knees, because she had warned him that climbing onto the table would not improve the meeting. Masato asked whether Naruto understood why the market incident had been dangerous. Naruto explained that he had used too much chakra, frightened people who were not involved, and caused damage. He also said the merchant had been a jerk. Kurenai closed her eyes for a moment. Hiruzen allowed the answer to remain in the record. The medic asked what Naruto would do if a technique began to feel unstable. He answered that he had to stop, breathe, and tell Kurenai instead of trying to overpower it. The welfare officer asked where he kept his belongings. Naruto glanced at Kurenai. He said most of them were in his room. Most was an important word. Then Masato asked what Naruto would do if the adoption petition was denied and the temporary guardianship ended. The question emptied the room of every other sound. Naruto had prepared for it without realizing. He knew where his bag was. He knew how quickly the coins and picture could go inside. He knew the care building might have space again by now. He also knew what answer adults preferred. A good child would say he understood. A grateful child would promise to behave better in the next placement. Naruto looked at Kurenai's hand resting beside the folder. A faint scar crossed one knuckle from the warehouse fight. He said he did not want to leave. That was all. The adults asked him to wait outside again. The decision came 20 minutes later. The medical office found no evidence that living with Kurenai had increased the danger of the seal. The neighborhood patrol reported fewer incidents and better communication. Emiko confirmed that Kurenai followed every supervision requirement. The care record showed that Naruto's sleep, diet, and behavior had stabilized after the move. The welfare officer also reported the results of the earlier care building investigation. Each child now had one primary caretaker, even when other staff rotated. A transfer required an independent review, and staff were forbidden from discussing classified security fears around children. Those changes could not repair Naruto's earlier placements, but the village had not ignored what the investigation revealed. Masato still preferred stricter institutional control. He argued that a permanent family placement would make future security decisions more difficult. Hiruzen answered that difficulty was not the same as danger. The village could protect its Jinchuriki while recognizing that Naruto was also a child with legal and personal needs. The temporary guardianship became a permanent adoption. Naruto kept the name Uzumaki. His birth records remained sealed, but the public family register would name Kurenai Yuhi as his mother and legal guardian. His existing child support allowance would remain attached to him and be managed through the household account. The house received permanent barrier protection. Anbu observation would continue at a reduced distance unless a new threat appeared. Kurenai's work assignment also changed. She would remain eligible for field missions, though most of her duties would involve internal security, genjutsu analysis, and support training for young shinobi. The path toward Jonin would be different from the one she had expected. It was still open. Hiruzen called Naruto back into the room. He placed the adoption document on the table. Naruto read slowly. He knew enough characters to find his own name, and Kurenai's. He read those lines again, then a third time. Hiruzen explained the decision. Naruto listened until the words, "permanent adoption," reached him. Then his attention stopped on the seal, stamped at the bottom of the page. He asked whether the warehouse had changed their minds. Kurenai understood the question beneath it. Naruto believed he had finally done something useful enough to be kept. She turned the document so it faced him, and pointed to the filing date on her adoption application. It had entered the village record before the winter market accident and before the warehouse theft. Kurenai told him that the adoption was not payment for catching Tetsuo. It would not be canceled the next time he failed a lesson, broke a cup, or made her angry. Naruto studied the date. "Then what do I have to do to keep it?" he asked. Kurenai answered him clearly. "Come home." Naruto pressed one thumb against the edge of the document. His eyes moved across the page again. He did not cry. He asked whether permanent meant he could paint his room. Kurenai said they would discuss colors after he proved he could paint a wall without also painting the floor. Hiruzen signed the final line. On the walk home, Naruto carried an official copy inside his jacket. He checked it at every second street, making sure the paper had not vanished. Kurenai bought steamed buns from a corner stall. Naruto ate one and wrapped the second in its paper. He carried it all the way home, instead of hiding it in his clothes. That evening, Kurenai placed the adoption document in a wooden box with her mission certificates and property papers. Naruto asked to move it. He put the box on the lower shelf in his room where he could reach it. The old canvas bag still waited beneath the bed. Kurenai left it there. Several weeks passed after the adoption. The house changed in small, practical ways. Naruto's sandals began appearing beside Kurenai's instead of near the bedroom window. His lesson pages spread across the sitting room table. The food box in the kitchen held snacks for both of them, though Naruto marked his favorite rice crackers with ink to prevent what he called accidental adult theft. His training resumed under stricter limits. Kurenai returned to the handbell exercise. Naruto could now place one false knock near a door or one chime near a window. The illusion remained simple, but he produced it with less wasted chakra. He was forbidden from linking two senses until the medic approved the strain. Naruto complained that the rule prevented rapid greatness. Kurenai replied that rapid greatness was less useful when followed by 2 days in bed with a headache. Instead, they worked on a harmless visual effect. Naruto wanted to make a dragon. Kurenai reduced the goal to 1 point of light. He wanted the light to breathe fire. She reduced the goal to making it move in a straight line. For 10 days, the light behaved like a confused insect. It appeared too bright, vanished too quickly, or shot into the ceiling. Naruto once created 6 at the same time and lost control of all of them. They bounced around the kitchen, while Kurenai protected the soup from imaginary sparks. The lights were harmless, but Naruto still had to clean the soup he knocked over while chasing them. He continued practicing. One evening, Kurenai returned from a late security meeting and found the house dark. Emiko sat on the back step with a cup of tea. Naruto had asked for 5 minutes alone in the sitting room to prepare something, and she had remained just outside the kitchen door while the watching Anbu covered the roof. Kurenai checked the barrier seal. It remained intact. Emiko gave a small nod. Kurenai opened the front door. A small red light floated above the sitting room floor. Another rose near the table. A third drifted beside the window. They were uneven and slightly transparent. One turned orange whenever Naruto's concentration slipped. Another moved backward, corrected itself, and nearly collided with the wall. Naruto sat cross-legged in the center of the room, with both hands locked in a seal. A folded paper flower rested on the table in front of him. He had anchored a small stationary field to the flower, no wider than the sitting room. When Kurenai stepped inside it, the red lights entered her sight and moved around the paper petals like slow fireflies. Kurenai closed the door carefully. Naruto had copied the flower he once left at the memorial. He had made a new one from clean paper, though one petal was still larger than the others. The illusion served no combat purpose. Naruto had created something gentle and held it steady long enough for another person to see. The last light flickered out after several seconds. Naruto rubbed his fingers and said he could make them brighter next time. Kurenai sat beside him. She told him the control mattered more than the brightness. He leaned against her shoulder while examining the paper flower. His body relaxed before he remembered to move away. The academy preparation assessment arrived the following morning. Naruto opened the envelope so quickly that he tore one corner. The instructions listed basic reading, counting, physical coordination, and chakra safety. Successful children would enter the academy's next beginner group at the start of the next term. For the next week, Naruto treated the assessment like a war. He studied until he got bored, trained until Kurenai stopped him, and designed several plans to impress the instructors. One plan involved entering through a window. Another involved using genjutsu to make himself appear taller. Kurenai rejected both. The night before the assessment, Naruto searched for his canvas bag. Kurenai found him kneeling beside the bed. The bag lay open on the floor. The 3 coins and the old Hokage picture had been removed. Naruto placed them in the wooden box beside the adoption paper. He filled the bag with pencils, 2 lesson books, lunch, bandages, and the cracked wooden frog. The frog was unnecessary. Naruto said he was serving as a tactical advisor. Kurenai checked the straps and repaired one loose seam. In the morning, Naruto ate too quickly, remembered the first dinner in the house, and deliberately slowed down. Then he stood at the door with the bag over one shoulder. Kurenai handed him his lunchbox. A note rested inside. Naruto opened it immediately. It told him to answer the instructors honestly, avoid climbing through windows, and eat the vegetables. He complained that the last instruction had no connection to shinobi education. Kurenai told him it was the most important part. They left the house together. The academy stood near the center of the village, surrounded by training yards and tall wooden fences. Families gathered near the front gate. Children compared new shoes, practiced kunai, and stories they had heard from older siblings. Several adults noticed Naruto approaching with Kurenai. A mother drew her son closer. Another parent whispered to an instructor. Two children stared openly at the marks on Naruto's cheeks. One moved aside when he reached the gate. Naruto's hand tightened around the bag strap. Months earlier, that bag had held everything he owned because he expected another adult to send him away. Now, it carried lesson books and lunch. The house behind him contained clothes in a wardrobe, food in a covered box, and an adoption paper on a shelf. Frightened looks would follow Naruto beyond the gate. Kurenai would wait at home while he entered classrooms filled with children who knew the Nine Tails attack as a frightening story. They knew Naruto only as the boy their parents warned them to avoid. Naruto looked back at her. He started to say that he would return after the assessment. The word came out before he could examine it. "I'll be home after lunch, Mom." Naruto froze. Kurenai adjusted the twisted strap on his shoulder. Her fingers rested there for one moment. "I know." Kurenai treated the word as natural. Naruto let it remain between them. He walked through the academy gate. Inside, an instructor rang a handbell to gather the children. The sound came from the center of the yard. Naruto identified it at once. A second chime echoed from the left wall. This one was false. Naruto turned toward it and saw an academy teacher lowering his hand sign. The man was testing which children noticed simple genjutsu before the assessment even began. Most kept walking toward the real bell. Naruto looked from the teacher to the false direction, then smiled. He raised one hand and pointed toward the wall to show that he had found the illusion. The instructor marked something on his board and gave a small motion toward the real bell. Naruto joined the other children in the center of the yard. The teacher kept watching him as the next exercise was prepared. The assessment had begun.